And I believe that one of the great lessons that India has for the world, but first of all she has to reteach herself, is that we are one with nature. And I often think back to Rabindranath Tagore in this context, because Tagore was so wise and put things so well. And he once said, "The West seems to take pride in thinking that it is subduing nature, as if we were living in a hostile world where we have to wrest everything we want from an unwilling and alien arrangement of things. India includes the world with man as one great truth." But of course, India nowadays, in my view, is following the path of the West. It is, as you heard, in some senses, following what Macaulay himself set out as an agenda for India. Because Macaulay was the person who, although in the end he became to respect India, was the person who believed that the future of India lay in following the English way and not just in language. So you have an India which, in my view, is still aping the Western way, still following the Western way. And what is wrong with the Western way? I think there are 2 or 3 things I would like to comment on briefly. One is that there is a lack of moral purpose. There is no moral compass in the economics which we pursue. We're told we are going to try and get a certain rate of development, but we're not really told what is the moral or the ultimate purpose behind that development. We are told also that we will develop if we buy more, if we become more and more consumers. But consumerism is something which is based fundamentally on greed. If we are not greedy, then we will not want to consume. So in a sense, there is a moral flaw at the heart of this idea of development. And also, I believe very strongly that, and this brings me to Vivekananda, I believe very strongly that there is a lack of understanding of the transcendent, a lack of sense of the transcendent. Everything is about what happens in this world. And yet the great wisdom of India has been, the greatness of Indian philosophers has been to manage to bring the transcendent down to the immanent and yet keep it as transcendent. Or to put it more simply, that Brahman or the ultimate purpose or God, or call it what you like, is transcendent and yet at the same time dwells in all of us. And if India found the moral purpose in the search for the transcendent within the individual, then I think it would pursue a very different pattern of development. Lastly, I would like to say that the pattern of development which India is following and which the West is following is surely ultimately unsustainable anyhow. You can see the streets of Pune now. Imagine what the streets of Pune would be like if if there was the same number of cars per citizen of Pune as there would be in a citizen of London or a British town, or even more so of an American town. That is only just one example. And what do we do? What do we say when we realize that there are problems which make this development unsustainable? Well, we say technology will find an answer. But here I think I come to that wonderful saying of Vivekananda which you have heard, that science is a wonderful thing. But science on its own can be very misleading, can create more problems than it solves. Science needs a moral purpose or a spiritual purpose or something like that. And if there is no moral or spiritual purpose, then science can mislead us. And what is saddest of all is, in my belief, that if we were to pursue a development agenda which concerned itself also with the helping people, inspiring people, leading people to consider the moral compass that they need to have and that the nation needs to have, if it was to lead to think about those things, then I think we would all be much happier. And that's, in a strange way, what Bhutan, that very small country on your neighbor, is pursuing when it says it doesn't want GDP growth. It wants gross happiness growth. And gross happiness growth cannot come if we simply think that happiness lies in eating more, driving more cars, buying more things, and consuming. So to end, I want to end with two quotes. One again from Tagore, who Tagore said, "Man's greatest happiness is not in getting anything, not in getting anything, but in giving himself up to what is greater than himself." And that is the traditional search of Indian philosophy, the way that man can dedicate himself to that which is greater than himself and that lies in himself. And the last person I want to quote very briefly is Mahatma Gandhi. You have a statue of the Mahatma there, and I would just like to tell you that I have seen in Johannesburg in South Africa a statue of the Mahatma as a young man. And whenever I see the Mahatma as an old man, I think to myself that here is a man whose whole life was dedicated to struggle. And you students run the danger that here you are in this wonderful Sansad, this wonderful parliament, enthusiastic, anxious to create a better India and a better world. The temptation will be for you to go out into the world, become involved. I know this from my own experience. You become involved in all the problems of living your lives out in the world, and you forget your enthusiasm. Well, when you next see a statue or a picture of the Mahatma, don't think of him as an old man, but think of him as a young man, and then think of him as someone who, throughout his life, continued that struggle. And what was the very brief quotation of the Mahatma that I want to leave with you? It was very simple. It was, "You must be the change you wish you would see in the world. You have to be the change you want to see in the world. If you don't change, the world won't change."